SLT එක්ක ස්පීඩ් අප් වෙන්න. සුපර් ඩීල්ස් අත්විඳින්න. SLT ස්පීඩ් අප් සුපර් ඩීල්ස් සැප්තැම්බර් 30 දක්වා පමණයි.
Tonight, UN's compromise. Only 25% of stationed Sri Lankan peacekeepers to be replaced. Foreign Secretary, however, accuses UNDPO of cherry-picking. Defining talks. Two leaders of the SLPP and SLFP meet to bargain allegiance. Sajid's fixer elixir. UNP's presidential contender reveals his formula for policy.
We shall do a thorough cost-benefit analysis. If the benefits outweigh the costs, that will be government policy.
Doesn't pull punches over failure to push through constitutional reform.
Certainly there wasn't any communication at all. There was inadequate mass mobilization.
Between your government and the masses.
Oh yes, that's quite apparent.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Saturday, the 28th of September, 2019.
මුහුණ සති කීපයකට කලින් ෆෑර් ඇන්ඩ් ලව්ලි මෙන් ගෑවට පස්සේ මාක්ස් අඩු වෙලා ෆෑනස් වැඩි වෙලා.
මාක්ස් අඩු කරලා ඔයාගේ ෆෑනස් ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එක වැඩි කරගන්න. ෆෑර් ඇන්ඩ් ලව්ලි මෙන් ඇන්ටි මාක්ස් ක්‍රීම්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammika Kanaka. Let's start with your local stories. The United Nations Department of Peace Operations has informed Sri Lanka that only 25% of the troops from the island nation presently engaged in peacekeeping operations will be replaced when they complete their term in Lebanon. Sri Lanka's Foreign Secretary AdaDerana is currently leading the Sri Lanka delegation to the 74th UN General Assembly session. Now, yesterday, he met with Under-Secretary General of the United Nations Department of Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, at the UN headquarters in New York to discuss obstacles placed on Sri Lanka's peacekeeping contribution to the UN. In a statement, the Minister of Foreign Affairs said places for the Sri Lankan peacekeeping contingent will be filled through a readjustment of existing peacekeepers presently in Lebanon. It said Lacroix confirmed that there will be no further reduction of Sri Lanka peacekeepers. The statement further noted that Secretary Arisinghe observed in operationalizing this decision by seeking non-replacement of Sri Lankan peacekeepers in one location where it is relatively easier to serve, while expecting them to continue in more vulnerable and high-threat locations. The United Nations Department of Peace Operations was resorting to cherry-picking on a questionable basis, which bears hallmarks of politicization of a sacred duty. The deputy spokesperson of the UN Secretary General issued a statement on Wednesday to ban the Sri Lankan military from participating in further peacekeeping operations, which could have seen the repatriation of all Sri Lankan peacekeepers currently stationed with immediate effect.
කිසකෙස් යනවාද විසඳුම දින 6න් පුරාණයේ පටන් භාවිතා කරන ඉපැරණි ශාකසාර වට්ටුරුවකට අනුව නිපදවන ගානීෂා hair growth oil සියලුම ෆාමසි සහ වෙළඳ සැල් වලින්.
Now, President Maithripala Sirisena has informed the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna that he will inform the SLFP's final decision on supporting SLPP presidential hopeful Gotabaya Rajapaksa by Monday. The final discussion regarding the proposed alliance between the two factions were held today with the participation of the President, Opposition Leader Mahinda Rajapaksa and SLPP presidential candidate.
A special meeting was held between leader of the SLFP President Maithripala Sirisena and leader of the SLPP opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa at the presidential secretariat today. Presidential candidate of the SLPP Gotabaya Rajapaksa and national organizer of the party Basil Rajapaksa also attended the meeting. There had been extensive discussions about how the two factions must work together during the looming presidential election this year. Members of the SLPP had mooted the formation of the proposed broader alliance and its symbol prior to the presidential election. The president had responded, saying that the matter will be put to the Central Working Committee of the SLFP on Monday and will inform the SLPP faction of its decision soon. Meanwhile, two members of these factions expressed their views regarding the proposed alliance.
අපිට අපේ ලකුණ වෙනස් කරන්න අවංකවම දැන් බෑ.
We can't change our symbol at this time because even the minority political parties agreed on this. I hope this issue will resolve itself since all of us are going in the same direction.
ඒ නිසා මම හිතන්නේ මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසදේ කියලා මම හිතනවා.
Let's not just focus on the symbol. We will not make a decision that will allow the UNP candidate to secure their win. I have not seen any SLFP member raising their objections against SLPP presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa. I hope the SLFP Central Working Committee will take a decision regarding the matter by Monday, which is why these next 48 hours will be crucial for the party. Now, in the meantime, leader of the opposition hails former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa as the most befitting candidate to lead the country and ensure national security at a time when the country is immersed in fear. The opposition leader made this comment at an event held in Colombo, which was also graced by the former Defence Secretary.
The National Convention of Agricultural Research and Production Assistant Officers was held in Colombo today, presided over by opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa and presidential candidate of the SLPP, Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
Farmers are faced with many difficulties due to the imprudent plans of the government and their lack of priority given to farming. Under our government, we will give priority to agriculture. We will raise your quality of life by introducing a national policy prioritizing agriculture. We made the country self-sufficient during our era. Our duty and our responsibility is to develop agriculture by saving the money we spend on agriculture imports for our farmers. The whole country is engulfed in fear today. We fear to conduct gatherings of this nature. We are afraid to visit places of worship, thinking where and how bombs would go off. We should conquer this fear. National security should be established in the country, and we have chosen the right person to do so.
Subsequently, the National Convention of Professionals in Beauty and Textile Industry was held under the patronage of opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa and former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa also in Colombo.
We should intervene in providing new markets for the apparel sector. Asia especially has become a good market with a lot of middle-class participation, and the government should mediate along with the private sector to pave way in finding new markets. They will continue to sling mud and spread false rumours. No matter what, the people of this country will make sure that Gotabaya becomes the president of this country on the 16th. Now, the newly declared presidential contender of the United National Party, Sajith Premadasa, was under the spotlight today as he was extensively quizzed by journalists on topics ranging from policy to failure of the United National Party-led government, in which he continues to be a minister. He gave a very simple explanation on how he intends to form policies, saying if benefits outweigh the costs, it will be made government policy. The minister also gave a stark admission on the government's apparent failure, as he termed, to communicate with people pertaining to the constitutional reform process.
Conditions about your candidacy, to which you said you will never agree to preconditions and dignity is important. Do you think that dignity is intact and the entire party is behind you now, including the Prime Minister?
It has always been united. I was merely pronouncing part of my character. You are mistaken to say that I was subjected to conditions. All I said was Sajith Premadasa is a person who will never ever bow down to conditions in order to attain personal political goals. Since everybody knows who I am, they would not dare put forward conditions.
What is your position on the US agreements, the SOFA and the MCC? Will you be signing them? The government
No, as far as international agreements are concerned, as with any other policy decision, first most priority is the national interest. So what I would do is have a fresh look at all international political agreements, economic agreements, trade agreements. I will have a very transparent procedure whereby we enlist the support of all stakeholders, including specialists in those particular topics. We shall do a thorough cost-benefit analysis. If the benefits outweigh the costs, that will be government policy.
In your reading, Why did you think that the constitution reform process could not be completed in the current term? And how do you propose to give it leadership in case you come to power in the next?
Generally speaking, in any reform process, you have to ensure that the people are made aware of all the details in an open and transparent manner. It's extremely important that there is adequate communication between the rulers and the people. Most efficient methodology is to have a very excellent communication network whereby all the proposals in all of the reform packages are conveyed to the people in an authentic manner.
So do you say that there wasn't sufficient communication?
Certainly there wasn't any communication at all. There was inadequate mass mobilization.
Between your government and the masses?
Oh yes, that's quite apparent.
What are the first major changes that you will do?
The first major change is ensure that the taxpayers' rupees are less spent on the executive.
Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, made a very personal confession today. Addressing an event held in Colombo, His Eminence said that he feels responsible as a priest for failing to prevent the Easter Sunday attacks. He revealed that the shock of seeing the deceased victims was so great, he began to self-doubt whether he had performed his religious duty as a priest.
One
of the main reasons as to why Sri Lanka can't move forward is because of corruption that persists from grassroots level to the top of the hierarchy. The public today have forgotten living fairly by following one's religion. There must be social cleansing in our country along with an ideological revolution. It became a shock for me when I saw all of those bodies and remains of the Easter Sunday attack victims at church. I questioned myself as to what I was doing as a priest. I blamed myself for what these people were doing, as I felt it was because I had neglected my religious duties. Now, mysterious death of cow elephants in the Hiriwadunna Reserve of Habarana continues to perplex the authorities as they struggle to identify the cause of death. The number of dead animals discovered so far has now risen to 7.
Corpses of 4 cow elephants, including a pregnant animal, were discovered adjacent to a lake in the area of Hiriwadunna of Habarana yesterday. The body count went up today with the discovery of another dead cow elephant from a nearby field. A calf, which is suspected to be the offspring of the dead animal, continued to stay close to the corpse. With the elephant calf being protective of its mother's body, officials of the Giritale Veterinary Unit tranquilized the calf and performed an autopsy on the cow elephant. Subsequently, wildlife officials, together with the army, police and the locals, launched an operation in search of any other possible dead elephants, which yielded 2 more corpses. It pushed the total number of deaths to 7, and all the dead animals to be discovered so far being female is a point of note. Wildlife officials, however, were unable to pinpoint a definite reason for the deaths.
Former Customs Director General Jagat Vijayveera and former Customs Additional Director General Taraka Senivaratna were remanded until the 8th of October. The duo was arrested by the Financial Crimes Investigation Division yesterday of accusations of releasing 8 kilograms of confiscated gold from the custody of Customs Department for the enshrinement of treasure in the base ring of the Sanahiru Mahasaya. There will be more news on the other side of this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, political and social activist Milinda Rajapaksa notes that lack of proper education related to civic powers, such as the right to vote and constitutional privileges at school level, has become one of the biggest challenges faced by new voters who are largely uninformed of the power they wield during elections. Speaking to Indivari Amuatta during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, which will telecast right after news tonight, Rajapaksa went on to highlight the powerful role youth and women in Sri Lanka should play to change the course of the nation.
Young people, you talk about how they value and celebrate the Sri Lankanness, but in the Sri Lanka's recent context that young people are easily instigated against one another. Well, what's this burning issue in our society?
No, see, any movement, their first target audience is young people because they are always asking for a new experience. If you really look at it from their point of view, they think that is the right thing to do. They think they did the right thing at that time. We are the only nation where young people have got involved in 3 youth uprisings within 3 decades.
But without that sense of responsibility to understand their actions will have greater repercussions. Where have we gone wrong here?
As school kids, we never talk about the civic participation. You are 18 years old. For that 18 years, tell me at what point, where, when, who have taught us how to use your voting power and why you should use that voting power? And that is where the biggest mistake starts from. So you get engaged with the governance of the country without a prior notice. There is an election coming up in 6 weeks. More than 1 million young people in the very are going to vote first time for a presidential candidate.
What should we vote for as young people, as a nation?
Now young people are asking for a new political experience. Whoever you are going to vote, that vote should be an informed decision. Not because my father and mother have been voting to this particular party. Those are not the reason why I should give my power of the sovereignty to one person to lead the country.
A lack of interest about young people in political participation. Why is this an issue in Sri Lanka?
If you look at the numbers in this country, are very similar to most undeveloped countries in the world when it comes to the women and youth participation in the politics. And most of the fast developing countries have ensured women and young people are in the core or the heart of their political parties, the political and administrative system, and the heart of the parliament or any other governing bodies. Millennials, especially young people who were born after 1980s, they are taking over the country everywhere else excepting in politics. So that's a crisis. That's why it's very important we as young people push, pull, fight for that and get our seat there.
Special Advisor to the Secretary General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, Anita Mendirata, urges the government to attract credible tourists to a recovering Sri Lanka in the aftermath of the Easter Sunday attacks. Addressing a summit titled Future of Tourism recently, Mendirata pointed out that these credible tourists will become the unofficial carriers of the message Sri Lanka wants to deliver to the outside world. Venturing his thoughts at the same event, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau, Kishu Gomez, meanwhile highlighted some of the challenges the Bureau is currently facing in terms of the sector's revival.
As Chairman of the Promotions Bureau, I have authority to spend only up to 100,000 rupees, and that too within certain areas only. And board has authority to go up to 100 million, but beyond that, everything has to go to the cabinet. That's a very tedious process. And then any agreement you enter into has to be approved by the Aegis department. So there are a lot of impediments not allowing the system to work the way it should be working. At a national level, the right thing has not been done. To an extent where Sri Lanka tourism does not have a marketing partner.
This destination marketing and management is a complex issue, and it's complex to a level where it needs a holistic and a systematic approach, whether you have a crisis or otherwise. The second thing is when you are in a conflict or when you have an issue that affects the destination, that basically affects you in terms of people understand you as lack of safety. And when that is associated with the destination, that becomes the center of attraction for the traveler. So with those two in mind, you have basically a problem in addressing 4 important areas. The first one is going to be what we call, it's undermine the visibility of the destination. You will see the airlines will pull out, tour operators will reduce the pages, and number 2 is basically reputation damage that will pose there for the entire destination. And the third one is the marketability of the destination. The fourth one is the perception as a tourism destination. There are hundreds of destinations to go, and the perception creates a bad image. If you sort of understand this reality, then we need to work on a proper strategy, may it be private sector or public sector, it has to be one plan that we work together. So the post-disaster recovery from private sector, there are two important factors that we'll have to address. One is actually there's a misperception, if there's any, saying that Sri Lanka is still not safe. That needs to be addressed. The second one is actually restoring the confidence of the people. Remember that currently Tourist Board Act is the only act which we found the private sector participation in the board level. And what we need is actually from private sector perspective also to get more organized.
A nation's brand and a nation's identity are two different things. And part of the identity of a destination is its travelers. So to your point, immediately after a crisis, it's about getting the right people at the right time to the right places for the right reasons. This issue of over-tourism is a combination of bad management, but it's also bad manners. Just because someone has an airline ticket, a passport, a cell phone, and a credit card does not allow them to walk into someone's home without checking if they should take off their shoes. Travelers need to always remember that they are guests. So in the recovery phase, you want those more credible voices and travelers coming who can speak with credibility. So the phasing of the travelers is critical to the recovery process because they become the unofficial carriers of the message, which is then magnified.
We'll take a look at what's happening around the world on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, a Democratic-led U.S. House of Representatives committee issued a subpoena for U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, seeking to compel him to hand over documents concerning contact with the Ukrainian government. It is the latest move in rapidly escalating impeachment proceedings against President Donald Trump. He is being scrutinized for pushing Ukraine's president to investigate his Democratic rival, Joe Biden.
Nancy Pelosi finally capitulated to her angry mob. At 1 p.m. on Tuesday, she told the Atlantic Festival, pull it, everyone, no, we need an investigation first. We're not close to impeachment. We need an investigation first. A couple hours later, she does the worst thing a woman in power can do, which is she just changes her mind because the men around her said, change your mind. We need an impeachment. She did that without seeing the transcript of the call, the memo of the call. That you seem to don't like what's in there.
Are you saying she was intimidated?
Clearly. And something happened. I don't know what she had for lunch at
Hosts Japan pulled off one of the biggest upsets in the Rugby World Cup history as they beat world number 2 ranked Ireland 19-12 today. First half tries from Gary Ringrose and Rob Kearney had left the Irish at 12-9 ahead at half-time, with 3 penalties from Japan kept them in touch. But the second half saw Japan assume total command with a wave of attacks to win the game. The historic victory has left Japan top of Pool A with a perfect record after 2 games, while Ireland, so impressive in beating Scotland last weekend, has suffered its first loss. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.